Want to guess what the worst MCU film is? Iron Man 2? Yeah, it used to be. Thor: The Dark World? Yeah, that also used to be. Nope, the worst MCU film came right before what I hope will be the best. Yes, I'm talking about Captain Mar-Vell. Oh my goodness, this movie. There's a lot to unpack here, guys, a whole lot. In my opinion, this movie was a trash fire. I'm of course going to give my reasons why, but before I do, here are a few disclaimers, because I had to explain myself to people who would otherwise misunderstand me or label me from this video. Here they are. Number 1. I have absolutely nothing against strong female characters, or female leads in general, as long as they are handled correctly. 2. Some of the opinions in this review will be unpopular, but the great thing about opinions is that you can disagree with me, and that's completely fine. 3. I am not racist, sexist, xenophobic, or any otherwise label or brand. Unfortunately, there are some who may misinterpret me that way by watching this review. But know before we get into anything that all humans are equal, and I simply wanted a better, less political movie out of Mar-Vell, which had wisely stayed out of politics for the most part until now. I didn't want to hate this movie. If it was a good movie, I would have loved it. I love Mar-Vell movies. I went into the theater with a clean slate. Beware that this review will probably be a bit all over the place, but there's a massive amount to cover in this disaster of a movie, and we'll get to them in time. And finally, there will be spoilers. I won't be holding anything back, so please either watch this if you've already seen the movie, or if you don't care about spoilers. Okay, now that that's a lot of the way, we can start, and I hardly know where to start. I'm not going to be going into the plot detail by detail, just listing what I did enjoy about the movie, and then a much longer portion about what I didn't enjoy. So, what is there to like about this movie? Well, I mean, some of the tech on Kree was pretty neat. The makeup for the Skrulls was really good, reminded me of the orcs in Lord of the Rings. I loved the Stan Lee tribute with the Mar-Vell logo in the beginning. The CGI de-aging work on Samuel L. Jackson was really well done. After the first few scenes, I stopped noticing it. I liked the cat, until he did something I'll never forgive him for. The fight with the grandma on the subway was funny. Oh yeah, Ben Mendelsohn did a great job, and so did Samuel L. Jackson. They were really the only good actors here. Carol and Fury's buddy cop dynamic was pretty entertaining. Well, hang on guys, I'm trying to be fair. Oh, seeing Ronan the Accuser was pretty cool. Some of the jokes were funny, but a lot of them weren't. Yeah, that's all I got. Okay, now for the bad, and holy moly is there a lot to dig into here. First off, we need to talk about the meta surrounding this film. Now, normally I don't delve into this side of things too much, but some of the shady stuff going around this movie deserves some attention. The film caused an uproar before it even came out. We need to take a look at Rotten Tomatoes, the laughingstock of the online movie rating community. We all know their rating system is completely rigged, but once the movie released, audiences' scores were abysmal. A mere 36% of audiences liked the movie. Rotten Tomatoes decided to fix this, however, by actually deleting over 50,000 negative reviews, raising the audience score up to 57%. It was a totally dirty move on their part, but even with their review purge, 57% is pretty bad for a Mar-Vell movie. Even the want to see meter before the movie's release was tampered with. The meter was at less than 30% before it released, before Rotten Tomatoes decided to just remove the meter completely from the page. They were literally performing damage control before the film even hit theaters. And I get it, I felt absolutely no hype for this movie, and it isn't because it starred a woman. It just looked so generic, and the trailers were just downright boring snooze fests. Mar-Vell fans were being forced to watch this movie. Yes, forced. I'm pretty sure almost nobody wanted to see this movie for what it offered on its own. Any hype felt by fans was only because of this film's connection with Avengers Endgame, and there really wasn't all that much of it in the film. I went to see this only 2 days after it opened, and the theater was almost empty. I went 2 days after Infinity War opened by comparison, and the theater was jam-packed. Okay, now we gotta go after the acting in this movie. There were only 2 good actors, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, the Skrull General. That's it. The rest of the cast, well, they were bad. Agent Coulson didn't get near enough screen time, and most of the side characters were dull and forgettable. And Brie Larson, I mean, come on. She has an actual Oscar to her name for Best Actress. I can guarantee you that if I hadn't known that, I would have never guessed it from her performance in this movie. She was so horribly one note, so unlikable, so bored. Any emotion that she forced herself to act out looked so painfully, well, forced, so ingenuine. It was like Disney had some sort of dirt on her and they threatened to reveal it if she didn't act in this movie. I don't know. She felt like an extra in her own film, overshadowed by Nick Fury and Talos. I mean, Brie Larson looked the part, and her costume design was great, but her acting was so frustratingly bland. She always sort of whispered out or mumbled her lines, and even in scenes where you would expect deep emotion, there was none to be found with Larson. Mendelsohn did that himself. It's disappointing, especially out of someone with an Oscar for Best Actress. I genuinely couldn't believe how bad her acting was in this film. The MCU has some great actors working for them. Robert Downey Jr., Josh Brolin, Tom Holland, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson. They're all fantastic actors and actresses. It's not like Marvel doesn't have the resources. I'm not saying that Brie Larson is a bad actress. I haven't seen enough of her movies to say that. But in this particular movie, I would have never guessed she had an Oscar under her belt. Next up come the special effects. I mean, they were passable. Nothing really mind-blowing, but not as awful as Justice League either. Just kind of average stuff that we've seen dozens of times in the MCU before. Really, the Skrulls' practical effect faces were more impressive than the horrendously boring CGI fest of the climax. The music was pretty generic. No track really stood out to me. There were multiple songs from the 90s that might trigger nostalgia for some, but aside from that, the soundtrack was pretty generic. The action and fight scenes, well, they committed the cardinal sin of superhero movies. They were numbingly, painfully, excruciatingly boring. I was bored to tears through a lot of the fight scenes in this film. They were just so average. There were nothing we haven't seen Marvel do so many times before and done so much better. Who could forget the battle on Titan with Thanos, or the triple fight between Iron Man, Captain America, and Bucky in Civil War, or Captain America's fight in the elevator in Winter Soldier? None of the fights in Captain Marvel were particularly interesting and certainly not thrilling. I was slouched in my theater seat with my arms crossed, eyes half closed, thinking, hasn't Marvel done this so much better before? The scenes were just mindless and forgettable. Now for the confusion in the plotline. Boy, there was a lot of it. Throughout most of the film, Carol has severe amnesia and can't remember her life before she was taken to Kree. But so many of these scenes were jarringly edited and confusingly thought out that I feel like I would have to go see this movie again just to understand a few of the flashback scenes, especially when the Skrulls were probing her memory. Plus, the plotline ends up resolving itself so easily. Carol just sort of happens upon items or people that trigger her memory, and most of the time the triggers are so conveniently placed and lazily added, it broke immersion in the film. Since we're on the topic, now is a good chance to go over Carol Danvers as a character. Sure, Brie Larson acted badly, but that doesn't always translate to the character itself. However, I never really felt endeared towards Carol Danvers. She was just a very unlikable character. She didn't really have any flaw to overcome aside from trying to remember her past. She was a bit of a Mary Sue, though not as bad as Rey from the new Star Wars trilogy, and she displayed very little emotion. There weren't really any lines or scenes that got me invested in Carol as a character. I never really cared about her. I felt more endeared towards the Skrulls than towards Carol, which is definitely not what the movie wanted. Or maybe it was, I have no clue. A lot of what is supposed to endear her to the audience mainly has to do with the political skew of this movie, which I'll get to soon. But before that, I'm going to go over a few plot holes this movie creates within the MCU. First off, why on earth wouldn't Fury have contacted Carol before Infinity War? The Avengers have gone through some tough situations. Where was she during the Chitauri invasion, during Ultron's takeover, during the actual breakup of the Avengers? How the heck did the Tesseract end up from Howard Stark's office to Wendy Lawson's project? Captain Marvel was also extremely disrespectful towards the source material. In the comics, Monica Rambeau, the little girl in the film, was a grown woman with powers before she ever met Carol Danvers. The original Captain Marvel in the comics was a man named Mar-Vell, and he actually defeated Thanos in one comic timeline, later passing the mantle down to Carol Danvers. In the film, however, he is changed into a she, a pilot named Wendy Lawson. The only similarity between the comic and film characters were that they were both exiled members of the Kree. Another point was that in the Air Force, Carol's nickname was the Avenger. You guessed it, they named the Avengers Earth's mightiest heroes after Carol Danvers. Unbelievable. They also turned the Skrulls from cold-blooded villains to family-loving refugees who just wanted a home. And lastly, how Nick Fury loses his eye was unbelievably, stupidly anticlimactic. I mentioned the cat before. Well, in the movie there's an alien cat named Goose. You wanna guess how Nick Fury loses his eye? Yep, the freaking cat just sort of swipes at it with his claws. Nick Fury just sort of goes, ouch, and puts a bandage to his eye. That's it. That's how this fan-favorite character loses his eye. Hope that was worth the years of speculation, guys. I literally couldn't handle it after that. The movie was dead to me. And apparently even comic book fans dislike her as well. Captain Mar-Vell, formerly known as Miss Mar-Vell, has had nearly 7 reboots in the comic series, and she was never that popular of a character. I was in a comic book store recently and I saw issue upon issue of Captain Mar-Vell comics, and none were selling, unlike Spider-Man, Captain America, or Batman comics, which were in far less supply, even though Captain Mar-Vell should be trending right now. She was never that beloved a character, and not ever embraced by the comic book community, unlike Iron Man or the Hulk or Spider-Man, who were loved and known by nearly everybody, even before their movies came out. Now, I understand that the MCU is different than the comic book timelines, and that's okay. Liberties have been taken throughout the MCU, but they didn't just tweak the Captain Mar-Vell comics, they crapped on them. There's a difference between changing up or tweaking source material and then destroying that source material. Iron Man, Thor, and Black Panther's movies, for example, all stay mainly true to the comics for the most part. Okay, now for the messy part of the review. I don't like getting political on the channel, but this film was inexcusable. Before I go in, yet another disclaimer. I have nothing against strong female characters, as long as they are handled correctly, and I have nothing against putting relevant issues in a movie, but there's a time and a place for it. For a lot of this segment, I'm going to be comparing Captain Mar-Vell to Wonder Woman in the DCEU, which actually did a far better job of portraying a strong female character than Disney. Now, Brie Larson made it very clear that this was going to be a feminist movie. Well, it is. It's the bad kind, however. There's a montage in the first scene where Captain Mar-Vell is training for the Air Force, all around other men who are making fun of her and cracking some really cringy jokes. It's made abundantly clear that since she's a woman, these men don't think she deserves to be in the Air Force. It's utter nonsense. I'm positive that no man in the Air Force would treat a woman in this way. Every 10 minutes of the movie, we get it hammered into our skulls that Captain Mar-Vell is this awesome hero simply because she is a woman, and she learns her powers and becomes an overpowered one-punch man simply because she is a woman. She isn't kind-hearted, really all that heroic, or that great of a character, but because she's a strong woman, dang it, you need to accept that. Again, I have nothing against strong female characters, even though it might sound like I do. I don't. I can't emphasize that enough, but keep in mind when I say that they must be handled correctly. Wonder Woman is handled correctly. She's an amazing and awesome character, and I loved her movie, even though the ending was kind of rushed and boring. Anyway, here's the difference. Captain Mar-Vell is stone cold and has a heart of ice because she's just a strong woman. Wonder Woman is extremely kind-hearted, empathetic, and very likable because she doesn't derive her awesomeness from being tough as nails. She derives her awesomeness from being a hero. Throughout the movie, Diana always does the right thing, challenging not just men, but women too, in her quest to end the World War. She's a better and stronger fighter than Steve Trevor in the No Man's Land scene, and that's fine. The difference is that she and Steve are fighting together, and she isn't belittling Steve or shoving the fact that she's a woman down the audience's throats. Her romance in the movie with Steve makes her more human and relatable as well. Captain Mar-Vell doesn't have this advantage. Now, I'm not saying that every story centered around a strong female needs a romance plot, but it does help. And How to Train Your Dragon 3 also does this well, with the relationship between Hiccup and Astrid. Astrid was a strong female character, but she was a human one. She needed Hiccup just as much as he needed her. They fought in the movie together, side by side. Captain Mar-Vell does everything on her own, even when she's with Nick Fury, but it would have been better if the film wasn't so on the nose about her independent attitude. A few more comparisons between Diana Prince and Carol Danvers. Carol shows little desire to do the right thing, and when she does, it's usually because the plot makes her. Diana wants nothing but to do the right thing. She's a real hero, and it endears her to the audience. Diana realizes herself that forgiveness and love are more important than revenge or hatred. Carol also forgives her enemies, but it didn't feel like a turning point for her as a character, merely a twist activated by the plot. Diana treats women and men equally. Carol talks down to nearly everybody in the movie. Diana's awesomeness comes from her huge heart and her passion for doing good. Carol's awesomeness comes simply by virtue of being a woman. Look, men and women are different. I know it's almost a crime to say that on the internet these days, but it's just true. No one sex is better than the other, we're all human, but men and women are different. The reason why Wonder Woman works is because her heroism comes from inherently feminine traits, like love, nurturing, and caring. It's maternal in a way, because nearly every little child will sooner run to their mother when they get a scrape than their father. Trying to force masculine traits on a feminine character is why Captain Mar-Vell feels so fake. Male characters and female characters in superhero media should both work the same way. Both need a heroic trait. Both need a flaw to overcome. Both need to be endearing to the audience. Both need to work to achieve their goals. A female character shouldn't need to bypass any of these essential ingredients to a good story only because they're a woman. Wonder Woman wasn't a Mary Sue like Carol Danvers. She had strong heroic traits. Her flaw was being too trusting and naive, thinking that only one person is responsible for all the evil in this world when we're all to blame. She was extremely endearing towards the audience, and we wanted her to succeed. She also struggled to achieve her goals. She was met with tragedy, familial misunderstanding, and loss, but she overcame and became a better character for it. Carol Danvers has few overtly heroic traits. Really, I can't think I can name one. I guess she was kind-hearted towards her enemies and Nick Fury, but not in the same way as Diana. She had no flaws to overcome. If anything, her flaw was her amnesia, but that really isn't a flaw in her character, just a problem she had. She wasn't endearing to me at all. I can't speak for everybody, but she was painfully unlikable to me. She didn't really work that hard to achieve her goals either. The plot handed her goals to her on a silver platter, and in the climax, she destroys her competition flawlessly, all while Just a Girl plays on a radio in the background, further emphasizing the fact that she's awesome solely because she's a woman. That's not how it works. A man is not solely awesome simply because he's a man. He needs to be a hero. He needs to be likable. He needs a flaw to overcome. And he needs to become a better character by the end of the story. The same rules apply for women. There shouldn't need to be any discrimination between the two. I hope I've made myself clear with this. Some of my favorite stories have female leads. That's not the issue. But when strong female leads aren't handled correctly, like they are in other media, I get upset. Strong female characters can be great if they're given the same treatment as men. They're simply strong characters that happen to be women. Other political issues were shoehorned into the film that were just out of place and stupid, namely the Skrulls being compared to illegal aliens, which they undoubtedly were. Illegal immigration is a great issue to tackle, and we need more efficient systems to allow immigrants into this country legally, but it isn't good timing to talk about it in a superhero film. People go to superhero films to escape reality. We want to see things we can't see in the real world with people who do things we only wish we could do. We don't go to superhero movies to be reminded that women can do anything that men can do, or that illegal immigration is an issue. We get plenty of that in the real world. There's a time and a place to tackle serious issues, and there's plenty of MCU's films that do, but none of them stray into the political zone too much, and that's a good thing. Superhero films shouldn't be political, or at least not overtly. Finally, we need to talk about more meta surrounding this movie, namely the next Avengers movie and how this film connects. Well, for lack of a better word, this movie was completely and utterly useless. Aside from simply being here to introduce a female-led superhero movie, this movie just doesn't need to exist. It does very little to advance the here and now. The plot points with the Skrulls, the Kree, and the corners of the MCU now opened feel more like openings to the inevitable Captain Marvel sequel than crumbs that'll be picked up in Endgame. The only reason this film exists is so Captain Marvel can take her undeserved place as the person that's going to put the whooping on Thanos. Again, she doesn't deserve it. If she's the one who ends up defeating Thanos, I will be sorely, sorely disappointed. That's another main issue with this movie, the timing. It felt so out of place. It was like the Disney execs were sitting in a room and one person says, well, hey, the Avengers we got are kind of weak and Thanos is a really strong dude. How will they win? And another guy goes, I know, we can introduce an unpopular female Superman right before Endgame drops, and she can be the one that does most, if not all, damage to Thanos. What do you say? And then the first guy replies, well, the timing is really bad, but we do need a female-led superhero film, so why not? I'm just so confused. Captain Marvel is such an out-of-left-field option. Why not a movie on Black Widow? A beloved character whose movie I would actually want to see. Then there's the issue of Captain Mar-Vell's power level.
It's over 9,000!
Guys, she's overpowered. In the climax, she defeats her enemies effortlessly, and even destroys an entire alien spacecraft just by flying straight through it. It was like watching Superman defeat Steppenwolf in Justice League without breaking a sweat. She won so easily, all stakes were erased. She's just too powerful. Keep in mind, too, she gained her powers from one Infinity Stone. Thanos has all of them. How is she the most powerful character in the MCU again? That's what I'm afraid of, guys. Of all the characters that should kill Thanos, Captain Mar-Vell is darn near the bottom of the list. The only characters that should kill Thanos are either Captain America, Iron Man, or Thor. That's it. Those three. That's because they earned it. Thor lost his entire home, his entire people, even his brother, and he took the full force of a burning star to forge a Thanos-killing weapon. Captain America fought for his country, took on Hydra, and was instrumental in saving the whole world 4 times and counting. Iron Man has been around since the beginning. He suffered PTSD at the hands of the Mad Titan, and out of everyone, he should be the one to have a heroic last stand before ending Thanos' reign of terror. What has Captain Mar-Vell done to deserve the killing blow? Nothing. That's what I'm taking issue with. If Captain Mar-Vell was a man, I wouldn't want him to be the one to kill Thanos either. Regardless of how powerful he or she is, I have an emotional investment in Thor, Iron Man, and especially Captain America. But here we are. Now we have an overpowered character shoehorned into the MCU at possibly the worst time. Watching her destroy that spacecraft with her bare hands in the climax filled me with total dread. If she ruins Endgame, I'm the one leading the riot. Thanks for watching my review of Captain Mar-Vell. As you can tell, I was not a fan of this movie at all. If you want to watch it, fine, that's fine by me, go for it. But as far as a recommendation goes, this might be the first movie that I give a solid thumbs down. And you're more than welcome to disagree with me. If you love the movie, that's great, that's completely fine. Feel free to write down your thoughts in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, then leave a like, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.